Hey folks, Colin here from Sumthins Recording, and today I want to show you how to mix vocals to be upfront in the mix. We're going to be talking about getting your vocals to sit on top of the mix today, but before we dive in, if you are ready to take your vocal mixes to the next level and really perfect your EQ strategy, then I have just the thing for you. It is my ultimate guide to vocal EQ, and it's just a simple PDF that will walk you through how to EQ your vocals step by step to help you get polished and professional sounding vocal mixes without any more of the guesswork. It is a completely free guide, and you can download it below using the link in the video description. Now let's jump in here and talk about how to get your vocals to be up front and sit on top of the mix. Let me start here by playing you what the vocal sounds like here in the final chorus of this song, and then I'll solo up the vocals so you can hear the vocal by itself as well. And then we're going to talk about it's just one plugin that gives your vocal that little bit of extra edge to be competitive and be up front in the mix here. So let me hit play here. Here's our vocal in the finished mix.
Wait, it'll be a little longer. She's coming for you. She'll get here fast as she can. Just wait, gotta be a little stronger. You'll make it all through. Don't lose sight of her head. Wait, it'll be a little longer. She's coming for you. She'll get here fast as she can. Just wait. Gotta be a little stronger, you'll make it on through. Don't lose sight of her head. Wait, it'll be a little long.
So you can hear our vocal sounds full, it sounds big, it sounds fat, and it sits right on top of the mix. There's a lot of instruments going on here, and our vocal is still able to be heard over the top of everything. You can see we got a lot of guitars going on and a couple keys as well. It's a dense sounding mix, so sometimes it can be quite a challenge to get your vocal to sit out front or sit on top of something that's so dense like this, or a denser track like this. But there's just one plugin that I use. It usually ends up at the end of my vocal chain. There's an EQ after it here. It's just a limiter. So once I get my vocal set here, so I've done my EQ, I've done my compression here, I've done my de-essing with the multiband, and then the vocal was still struggling to compete a little bit. So if we go back here in the mix a little bit, let me take off this limiter here. If we go back to maybe this verse section here, you'll hear the vocal sounds okay here. It sounds good, but once we get to that last chorus where everything's going, it struggles to compete a little bit. So I'm gonna hit play, I'm gonna show you what this verse sounds like, and then we're gonna jump here to this last chorus.
She's the one who make me live for more than today. She'll make me thank God for every single mistake. 'Cause every wrong turn, every bump in the road will bring me right to her, and that's the heart I'll go.
So it sounds okay here. It still feels like it's struggling a little bit, like it's moving around a little bit too much for the mix. But if we jump to this last chorus here without this limiter, take a listen.
Wait, it'll be a little longer. She's coming for you. She'll get here fast as she can. Just wait, gotta be a little stronger. You'll make it all through. Don't lose sight.
It definitely sounds like the vocals getting overtaken by all the guitars and all the keys here, and even the drums too. It's starting to fall a little bit below that point where you want it to sit with the drums. Usually your vocal's sitting right there with the snare drum, right? The kick and snare are your prominent elements on your drums, and you want your vocal to be right there with them, feeling just as prominent and being the focal point in the mix. And starting to fall below that here, I don't necessarily just want to pull up the volume because like we said, it's feeling okay here in the verses. It's just wavering a little bit. So I just want to add a little bit of extra compression on the end here to sit the vocal in place a little bit better. And what I like to use is the limiter plugin here inside of Studio One. You can use like the L1 or the L2 from Waves. Just a little bit of limiting here on the end of the chain just to balance out the vocal a little bit more and make it really even. So when it gets to this final chorus here and we've got all this stuff going on, the vocal can still sit on top and it never wavers, it never dips below and you miss a word or two. You can hear every word and it's gonna feel nice and competitive here. So I've pulled the ceiling down on the limiter here to about -11. I'm just pulling it down to the point where it's doing about a dB of limiting here. And then I like to pull the threshold up into it to give it that little extra bump of volume into the limiter so it evens out to about 2.5, maybe 3 dB of limiting here. and then you can see I've pulled the release back so it's not so aggressive. It's a little bit lighter here, right? It takes a little bit to let go before it starts limiting again, because our attack's on normal, but a limiter, it's pretty quick here. So I'm going to hit play here with the limiter, and I want you to see what it's doing on our vocal here.
Wait, it'll be a little longer. She's coming for you. She'll get here fast as she can. Just wait, gotta be a little stronger. You'll make it all through. Don't lose sight of her head. Wait, it'll be a little longer. She's coming for you. She'll get here fast as she can.
So I'm going to hit play one more time. I want you to watch and notice the words that it's attacking here. Notice the parts of the vocal that are getting the limiting. Those are the parts that before were sitting okay in the mix, like you could hear them, and then the parts that we can hear normally now that aren't getting compressed sit nice and even with everything else. So we're just doing a bit of limiting here, a 2.5 dB of limiting, 2.5 dB of reduction on those louder parts of the vocal that were okay before, and then we're bringing up the quieter parts that were struggling to come through on this final big chorus. So one more time, watch and notice the parts of the vocal that we're doing reduction on.
Wait, it'll be a little longer. She's coming for you. She'll get here fast as she can. Just wait, gotta be a little stronger. You'll make it all through. Don't lose sight of her head. Wait, it'll be a little.
That's all it takes there just to bring our vocal up that much more in the mix. We're only doing about a dB of level gain here, but it's still different than just pulling up the fader, right? Because we're doing this little bit of limiting, 2.5 dB reduction on those louder parts of the vocal, and it allows us to bring up the quieter parts, the low level parts of the vocal, just enough to balance them out in the mix. So pulling down those louder parts by about 2.5 dB, pulling up the quieter parts about 1.5 dB, and then it creates a nice even vocal that's going to sit on top of the mix, and it's going to sit up front in our mix here. Let's take a listen to this verse, and we'll jump back to this final chorus. I want you to hear how it sounds in both these sections now. And I'll A-B the limiter for you as well here. So here's this verse section.
She's the one who make me live for more than today. She'll make me thank God for every single mistake. 'Cause every wrong turn, every bump in the road will bring me right to her, and that's the heart I'll call home. It'll be a little longer. She's coming for you. She'll get here fast as she can. Just wait, gotta be a little stronger. You'll make it all through. Don't lose sight of her head.
Now our vocal sits on top of the mix. It sits up front, and it's not getting lost under all these guitars and all these keyboards here in the song. One final thing here. Let me solo up the vocal, and I'll A-B this limiter for you. I want you to hear it's not that noticeable, right? This 2.5 dB reduction isn't that noticeably changing the tone of our vocal, just altering the volume a little bit of these low level parts and these high level parts to even out our vocal overall. So we'll start without it here, and then I'm going to kick it in. Just pay attention to how our vocal tone changes.
Wait, it'll be a little longer. She's coming for you. She'll get here fast as she can. Just wait, gotta be a little stronger. You'll make it on through. Don't lose sight of her head. Wait.
Not a huge change in tone, just enough change in volume to sit our vocal evenly and help it feel competitive inside a denser mix like this. Quick one here for you today. I hope that was helpful though. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you're ready to level up your vocal mixes and really start dialing in your EQ strategy, then I have just the tool for you, and it is completely free. It is my ultimate guide to vocal EQ, and you can download it below to start creating more professional vocal mixes in less time. Thank you so much for watching today, and I will see you in the next video.